Hey, this is Notser, and today we're going to be taking a look at Venezia. This is the Tier 10 Italian cruiser. It's really exciting to see the Italians get their Tier 10. How is she going to play? How does semi-armor piercing work? And what is with that consumable? But first, I'm excited to have Skillshare as a sponsor for today's video. Skillshare offers over 25,000 online classes with literally something for everyone. Skillshare's mission is to close the professional skill gap and provide access to high-quality learning. The website is easy to navigate, and you can find something that is right for you. Are you interested in knowing the do's and don'ts of graphic design, or just learning a more efficient way to use Photoshop? Just like my channel, Skillshare provides an excellent source of knowledge to help empower the viewers to dream bigger. I'm something of a Skillshare myself when it comes to knowing a thing or two about ships and ship combat. I've been happy to help people improve in their ship lives. Skillshare is happy to help in their real lives. There is a link in the video description for a 2-month free trial. Check it out and see for yourself if Skillshare is right for you. So the Venezia, using semi-armor piercing shells, for anyone not familiar, obviously this is a brand new shell type we've never seen in the game before. It's been adjusted since the last time we met with the 8.7 public test server, I think round 1 or round 2. So what semi-armor piercing is going to represent is it's going to represent sort of a mix of both high explosive and armor piercing. It has high explosive features in that it has improved penetration from a much more extreme angle with regard to the shell making contact with the ship. And if it can clear its initial pin threshold, which is another feature that is similar to high explosive, then it can do damage to that section of the ship. If it can't, it won't do anything. Whereas with armor piercing, you sort of have a much higher threshold on the ceiling of the pin, possible pin, but you also have a much reduced angle of effective penetration. And obviously semi-armor piercing is replacing high explosive, but you're not going to have any source of fire. So the Venezia, I think, unless you get close to secondary gun range, you're never going to have a chance to set someone on fire. Which, you know, layering with another teammate, you might lose out on, you know, overall total damage output. But the burst potential of this ship with semi is outstanding. I mean, it can almost one-shot every equal tier DD if all 15 guns or whatever. I think it actually can for most of them. And it is incredibly accurate over range. It's very deadly. And that works very well. And it needs to be accurate and pretty fair gun velocity because it needs it. It doesn't have hydro. It doesn't have radar. It doesn't have defensive AA. It is really a one trick. This semi-armor piercing shell needs to deliver heavy alpha towards targets that are vulnerable, low health DDs, cruisers showing too much sign, you know, battleships under focus fire. But you're not going to be a utility cruiser. You're not going to be helping other teammates out in revealing enemy location or having the ability to detect torpedoes that may or may not, you know, come in your area. You're really doing one thing. You are delivering a heavy alpha to a location on the map that no one else can bring. And honestly, based on the testing, that's all you need. The semi-armor piercing shell is the real deal. Now, maybe it's too much of a real deal. I mean, it seemingly is always the right ammo. Even when you have the most ideal situation for armor piercing, the risk of the target changing their angle over the course of a long reload is enough for you to, you know, say to yourself, well, semi-armor piercing doesn't really have the kind of downsides that would make me choose to use armor piercing. So why not just fire semi-armor piercing until I'm, you know, guaranteed AFK broadside target or, you know, something equivalent to it. Other than that, you're firing semi-armor piercing. And, you know, that sounds like another ship, the Conqueror, the British battleship line. People are annoyed that so many people seemingly fire a shell type that is deemed a lower skill, a lesser skill. And yet, the real reason why this line and the Italian cruiser line are going to exist and fire that one shell type it's because they're the best at that. They're the best at that identity. If they aren't the ones doing this, and I conquer a battleship trying to deal with a bow-on battleship. I mean, who else would you want doing that? That's who you want. They're the best at it. So I would expect that the Italian cruiser line with semi-armor piercing, they're just going to be the best at dealing with certain targets that would normally have been very, very effective at mitigating high explosive or whatever. They are suddenly vulnerable to the Italian cruiser, and I would really hope that that means that they have a spot in rank and random and clan and, you know, whatever. I feel like that's how cool this ammo type is. And one particular thing that they changed, they boosted the damage output against DDs versus the version that I tested, and it's definitely there. It's definitely a DD killer, but I like that it can't equip radar, hydro, defensive A. It can't equip anything, and it has terrible concealment. You know, it has to deal with all of the downsides, but the one upside is that it probably delivers the highest single alpha towards a DD of any ship in the game. I can't really think of one that just, like, if everything lands on it, and not everything lands on it, but it's a very accurate high gun velocity ship, it works really well against what apparently is the established meta. It's almost like it was designed expecting there to be so much DD presence that we wanted the Italian cruisers to be, okay, this is the de facto counter. As long as, you know, other DDs spot the enemy DDs and they get an Italian cruiser as backup, they're going to be sitting up in a really strong position. I mean, I was delivering 6,000 to 8,000 very simply with a couple of the turrets, you know, 2 to 3 against DDs. It's a very impressive loadout with regard to counter DDs, and I think that's great. I think the fact that they're not doing any high explosive is also great. I do have a disappointment with regard to the premium Italian cruisers and the mainline. You're not going to have the same commanders because they're going to have totally different builds. And until IFHE gets nerfed, and then you have to decide on which to pull, you're not going to drop that on your Italian premium cruisers. They need IFHE because they're all light cruisers. So that's my one concern there. This tier 10 is great. As you can see, very maneuverable. That we were using semi-armor piercing predominantly, and we're trying to locate it on bow, stern, super. If you can hit any of those shots, you're sitting pretty. It doesn't matter the type. This enemy Vladivostok, he's trying to angle. He does have a fire on him, and I am aware that there is a lion that is close, and we are just so close to killing this guy, but he drops off detection. And I was a little concerned because, like, I'm out in the open. I can't possibly hide against this line. It's a very weird, awkward standoff. I want to see how effective the armor can tank, and yep, Vladivostok aiming at us. The speed's really effective. I think the top speed is 37.5, 38 knots with my build. I'm using a speed flag, of course. Really enjoy that. Feels very French, so there's a lot of potential damage that's thrown off, and I like that. It has a slow rudder, so I did have to compensate for a faster rudder shift. And yeah, I wouldn't really change that. This little, you know, technique with the instant smoke is very cool, though. As long as you can keep in mind your smoke firing bloom, and whatever that number is, as long as you keep all the enemy outside of that, you basically can instantly drop in sort of like Vanish in World of Warcraft, Rogue, think about that. Instantly gain stealth, and then you can do another stealth attack against the target, or another target that they're not expecting. It's a very cool, empowering consumable. I would love to see this on a DD line, and I'm going to make the assumption that the Italian DDs are getting this. And I think it's awesome, this sort of instant stealth mechanic that, yeah, it might not make sense in a whole real-life scenario, but it makes sense in the game, and I want it to exist because of that. Also, we're going to make use of the Italian torpedoes. They basically can always be used because you can outrange them. It's just a really small especially a tier 10. It's only 3 torpedoes. You get 3 torpedoes per side. I mean, good luck hitting that. I like to really send them casually towards targets. People just don't expect it. Note that I sent one at the Lion, and then I sent one at the last known position of the Minotaur firing. I expected him to be roughly in that area, and we'll see what happens there. You just casually send them. Don't make it obvious that you're trying to angle. Note that the torpedo angling is wonderful for that. There's no giveaway at all that I'm interested in torpedoing because I don't have to show too much of my side. But it's never going to layer with damage control. And they're never going to have used damage control and allow the floods to stick unless it's a situation with other people slinging fire. That's the pro and con of the Italian cruisers and the tier 10. Your fire prevention, your damage reduction, the faster damage control, all that stuff doesn't really help. We can't really stop this. The only way you can stop this is for damage-saturated sections of the ship, or have him die over some brutal citadel. The Italians take citadels quite well, and from a lot of different angles. They're very vulnerable. They don't have good detection, clearly. They're one of the worst. They have no defensives, you know. They basically have their smoke, which is great. The only defensive, but it's also the only offensive too, and it's also your only, it's really just all you have, okay? It's the jack of all trades of skills. It's really going to have to carry a lot in the game. You know, do you use it offensively to move around the map undetected? Do you use it defensively to disengage? I really like the consumable, and I really like the whole identity of the Italians. It's too early to say exactly if the design is going to be balanced. I think that because of the way their smoke works, they really can't use it like a Kutuzov or a Smolensk. People having like PTSD from Smolensk. So it's not going to be something that you can rely on to get yourself out of danger. It's going to be something that's more like a short-term save, but it's not going to be a long-term solution. Whereas, you know, those more traditional smoke, that's a long-term solution. It's going to take a while, a couple minutes. Normally by that time, something has developed. Either someone has a radar solution when they've left the area, or they're aggressively pushing. When you see an Italian doing this, it's going to last for 40 seconds. You know, it's not going to last too long in the world. So you sort of just want to wait it out. Allow it to happen. I would argue that the British DDs are at this phase too, where they have a very limited, you know, duration ability to the point where the enemy can outweight it. I expect players are going to see that as something similar. Just outweight it, and then it has a 2.5-3 minute cooldown. Then what can they do, right? They don't have speed boost, and their rudder is really bad. So they're basically forced into a very specific build. That build works very well, mind you, the damage output. But once people understand the different tells of the Italians and the different tell of other ships, you know, where are we going to be? But as far as the tier 10, I love the 15-gun layout. This is the Mogami, this is the Ibuki, this is the Miyoko. This is a very familiar layout that I really enjoy. It brings back good memories. Love the maneuverability. I love the speed. I really appreciate the turret traverse. I did take expert marksman as compensation for improving the reload of the guns. That is the biggest downside, because this has the slowest reload of any traditional cruiser caliber. Yeah, I know there's bigger, you know. Okay, those aren't really cruisers, but there are cruisers in the game. Okay. I'll concede that they're flagged as a cruiser in the game. But this has the longest traditional cruiser line reload. So because of that, there's time for the enemy to hold their fire. There's also time where maybe your aim isn't good. I feel like this is a line that's going to be very difficult for a new or learning player, because you're going to have to be accurate in order to be able to keep up with the damage requirements just because of the reload. So I definitely think that the Italian cruisers are going to offer something that we desperately need. Something that's very good against DDs in sort of a fair way. Like having the long reload, high gun velocity, but the high damage makes them work very well against DDs if you can aim. And if you can time it out or, punish a DD that might have made a mistake, an error in their maneuvering. That's an exciting development, especially if you've played recent clan and recent rank where there's a lot of DDs, and I don't think it's going to go back. I think there's a lot of DDs because DDs are really good, and they've done a lot of things of walking back the effectiveness of cruisers, effectiveness of battleships, battleship AP and all that stuff. So I think that it's a right time for a line that works exceedingly well against them, and this is the line. So I'm just really excited. I'm really looking forward to playing all the other tiers. Obviously, leave in the comments what you think. Have you played against them? Do you feel like the AP is too high? The semi-armor piercing is too high? Or do you feel like, hey, all's fair in love and war? Thanks for watching. If you'd like to check out more of my content, you can click the most recent or the most relevant uploads. You could also choose to subscribe to my channel. We do daily World of Warship videos. First impression, how-to, news, review related. My North American recruit invite is on the screen. I stream at twitch.tv/Notser. Thank you, have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time.